Hi everyone, I've been putting this off for a while, but I thought I would finally do an update video. Feel free to put this in the background while you're doing something else because it's going to be long, and also I'm not doing anything, I'm just sitting here talking. But I wanted to tell you what I have been up to since the last time I uploaded a video, which was in September 2022, so almost a year and a half ago. I took some notes down to try to talk about the different phases of my life since then, so we'll just get into it. So the first phase is quitting my job. The last few videos on my channel, or maybe a major theme of the many videos on my channel, was my disenchantment with working as an IC at a big tech company, and this internal struggle between having an ostensibly very comfortable, well-paying job and then internally not feeling fulfilled in the work that I was doing. And I tried to remedy this in different ways that didn't get to the root cause. The root cause was the job itself, correct? I tried remedying this by, changing my environment, going to San Francisco and trying to go to the office and work there. I tried to get involved in side projects like an incubator program. I did Launch House in New York while still having my full-time job, and I tried to take longer vacations, but at the end of the day I got to a point where I was really depressed, almost to the point of tears. I remember I had a performance review coming up and I really hoped that I wouldn't meet the mark for performance because I wanted a low rating so that if we had another round of layoffs, I would be laid off and I could get severance to buy myself time so that I could figure out what I want to do with my life and my career. That didn't happen. I met my performance requirements and it was so funny. I actually started crying in front of my manager. Such a woman thing to do. Long story short, I eventually realized that I had to quit my job. It wasn't easy. I won't get into the intricacies of all of it, but just the last few months before I quit my job, I essentially did no work. And it also made me realize again how the nature of this conglomerate that I work in is, I don't know, it's just not authentic or not true to what work ought to be. So imagine you're working within an organization where everyone is fulfilling a particular role, right? Whatever they're assigned or paid to. And there's some people that I guess take real pride and passion in their work, and there's some people that just show up and do the thing. I used to be the first person when I started my career, I guess, and then I became the second person. But within this organization, both types of people can exist, and the latter one exists more than the former one. But you can't not be affected by the latter group, which is the larger group. So then the entirety of it starts to feel like, I don't know, really like an unfulfilling way to spend time and life, just doing things that other people are doing for reasons that no one really knows but has just general vague ideas. Anyway, that whole system of like working for a big tech company and being an IC is not for me. It will never be for me. I'd rather be a barista, or I like how people always go to baristas as like the thing you step down to from like a high-paying, stressful corporate job. But yeah, I basically can't go back to that. I actually had a nightmare last night where in my nightmare I received an offer to join the same company. For some reason, they wanted to hire me again and I didn't have to go through an interview process, and they gave me an offer letter and I accepted it because I was like, oh, I have no source of income right now, so this would be nice and it would shut up my family and other people who are understandably worried about what I'm doing with my life right now. But yeah, in my nightmare, then I started dreading the start date. I was like, oh my god, why did I do this? Why did I accept it again? So that was my nightmare. So anyhow, I quit my job in December of 2022. This was, I guess, 2 years of working full-time almost. I came from New York to visit my family in Vancouver, and then I got invited to a conference in Miami, Art Basel, So I just went there, and then I had a friend in Miami, so I stayed there for a month. But I didn't do Miami things. I basically just went to the gym. I had an Equinox membership back when I had a good salary, so I would just go to the Equinox and then try to enjoy the weather and the beach. And I really liked Miami for that reason. I didn't participate in the nightlife or whatever, but just the weather, the beach, and people's general laid-back attitude was really attractive to me compared to New York and San Francisco. And then towards the end of December, I went to Jacksonville, Florida for Christmas. A lot of my family got there together. And then at this point, I still wasn't working and I was recovering, I guess you could say, a bit from burnout. And I had friends who had done Launch House with me in New York say that they're organizing a digital nomad trip in Morocco and whether I wanted to go. I would have never planned to go to Africa, but this opportunity just fell on my lap and I literally had no plans scheduled for my immediate future. So I was like, sure, let's go. We went to Sawara. We stayed there for a month. The majority of them were people who had created their own startups and were working on it or something adjacent to that. A lot of independent type people. I had hoped that when I land in Morocco with this group of people that I would be in a mindset of building and creating and, you know, really creating the work that I wanted to do. But I got to Morocco and unfortunately I couldn't will myself to just do heads down work on a random project, right? So I spent a lot of the time in Morocco actually in my room, and I spent too much time daydreaming, and I think I felt overall a bit depressed because I couldn't get myself to, you know, be productive. So the Morocco trip was coming to an end and I feel like I didn't make the most out of it. I didn't even immerse myself completely in the experience of that. Like I had friends that would do things like horseback riding by the beach, or they went to the desert for this trip, and I didn't participate in any of those things because I thought I didn't deserve it and I couldn't do work, but I couldn't also enjoy myself, so it was a really weird state. Over there as well, I had some friends who had done or were doing psychedelics, and I was telling them about my problems, and they were telling me the merits of doing psychedelics and how it would open up your mind. But in my head, I don't like shortcuts to anything. I think anything that is developed authentically will last longer and will not have negative consequences. Whereas psychedelics is, I would say, a cheap way to try to get at a certain understanding of whatever your world, or try to touch a little bit on enlightenment. But the real work, if you want to do that, is through meditation. I wasn't convinced, despite the arguments that people made there to try psychedelics. So I was like, what's the next best thing? And a couple people in that group had done this yoga module at France near Lyon. It was called Herdaya Yoga. And again, I didn't have anything immediately planned, and I was in this weird phase of trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. So I was like, you know what? I've never spent that much time in meditation of my internal state. So why don't I go to this yoga thing and see what happens? The yoga thing was 21 days of Hatha yoga. Now I had done yoga, especially the last year, a lot at my Equinox classes, but a lot of it was power yoga or flow yoga. It was yoga for the purpose of exercise. You still got some residual positive effects of yoga, but it was mainly for exercise. And this yoga was entirely different. It completely transformed how I thought of yoga and how I practiced yoga. Ever since I did that 21-day yoga retreat, I practice yoga by myself now. I don't think I could do a yoga class and follow an instructor who, you know, goes through the motions, because I don't know, I developed such a personal relationship with yoga during this thing, and I really understood that it's a way of connecting with your body and what's going on inside of it. So your yoga practice should be deeply personal and in tune to you. So anyhow, I do yoga almost, or some form of it, almost every day. So it was definitely one of the best things I've ever done in my life, doing this 21-day yoga module. But there was one problem with the whole experience. I went to that retreat center to try to get my mindset right, and this was more focusing on your body, which is the other half of mindset, but it's not the complete full of it, right? So it ended, and there was a optional 7 a.m. meditation every morning, but since it was optional, I just skipped it. So I didn't do a lot of meditating, like in the traditional sense of like sitting down and closing your eyes and observing your breath. By this point, I had never meditated for longer than 10 minutes, really. I had used Headspace to do guided meditations, but I could never really stick to it because the repetitiveness of the instructions would really start to get to me and be intolerable. I have this weird intolerance for some reason to anything that I view as repeated. Like if I observe a pattern in something, I can't tolerate engaging in that pattern absent-mindedly. It's strange, and it applies to a lot of areas of my life. But yeah, this was one instance it also applied to. So lucky for me, after the 21-day yoga retreat, that retreat center was doing a silent retreat. I talked to some of the people that were, what were they called? Karma yogis, which were people who essentially lived in this retreat center, and for their work that they did for the center, like cooking food, cleaning, etc., or teaching, they would get free lodging and food. So these guys told me that they had done silent retreats, and every person who had done it just was like, it's like the most life-changing thing you could ever do. So I was like, where else am I gonna go? I'm in France, in Europe. This was my first time in Europe, by the way. So I was like, let's freaking do it. So a few days later, a 10-day silent retreat started. The silent retreat, the 10 days, was the most life-changing thing I've done in that amount of time. Like in 10 days, it drastically transformed how I looked at things. It was what I went to that retreat center for back in Morocco when I was talking about getting my mentality right, but not wanting to try psychedelics as a way to expand my mind. This 10-day silent retreat essentially achieved that exact same thing, but again, did it in a really healthy, sustainable way. To this day, I still have a meditation practice. So if you've never done a silent retreat, it can be pretty intense, and I had never done a silent retreat, but I was like, you know, if you're in a particular environment that is supportive and you're surrounded by a group of people who are doing the same thing, I think you can basically do anything. It's really hard to will oneself to do things when one is trying to do it in a familiar environment where, you know, old habits are ingrained, or you don't have a support system and everyone else is doing something different. Then it's really difficult. I could have never done just a 10-day silent by myself, but put anyone, I really believe anyone, in an environment where it has that environmental factor and social factor, then anything is possible. So I think that even if you've never done a silent retreat and there's a 10-day or 17-day one, just go and do it. You don't need to like prepare for it. You're gonna be able to basically knock it out of the park when you get there. That's a weird way to describe success in that, but yeah, so it was 10 days, no speaking. You had to keep your gaze low. Some people would wear hoods so that they didn't see people at all, because you wanted to simulate the silent retreats that I guess the gurus and sages would do by themselves in mountaintops or forests or wherever, and where they would have no contact with people. But you were in an environment surrounded by people, so you had to pretend they weren't there, so you could wear hats or whatever to not gaze at people. And then you weren't allowed to speak to anyone, and you weren't allowed to read or consume any form of media. Your devices had to be off. I don't think everyone adhered to that last one, because we got complaints from bunkmates that certain people were on their phones. And then there's no mirrors, which is also funny. But I admit I violated that. I had a pocket mirror, which I used. But yeah, they blocked off all the mirrors in the bathrooms and stuff. What else? I also violated the reading rule. By day 7, I found, you know how I said when I see like cycles of something, it becomes intolerable? I became really tired of the cycle of the whole daily experience, but particularly the lecturers. Some of the things that they were talking about, I just severely disagreed with. Like, it was too out there, and I'm more of a scientifically minded, grounded person, but I also am spiritual. It's weird. Anyhow, I just couldn't, I had little direction in the meditations because I couldn't fully resonate with the messages of what they were saying all of the time. The majority of it was fine. So I violated this by actually reading Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. I reread it because that's a good book, and it's pretty like sound-minded reasonings for these spiritual things. And then that did help me like go into my meditations stronger. So I thought it would have been really awesome to do a 10-day silence retreat where the lecturers and messaging is by people whose philosophies I adhere more to than the people at Hridaya Yoga. So in general, it was like 5 hours, somewhere between like 5 to 6 hours of meditation a day. There are silent retreats called Vipassana where it's entirely almost meditation, like 11, 12 hours of it. That's crazy, but ours was a bit less intense. So after the silent retreat, I was there at the center in total for 35 days. So I was like, I'm satisfied. I can move on now. I think my mindset is right. I know how to smell the flowers. I know how to taste my food. I am mostly fine with everything in my past. I understand how my mind works more and more, and I can separate the narrator in my head from the awareness of it. And I can move now with mindfulness in everything I do, the mindfulness that I was missing in Morocco, which in addition to not like allowing me to be productive and collaborate with people and work on projects, it also didn't allow me to actually enjoy Morocco in that environment and do fun things. So after this retreat, I was like, where do I go now? And naturally, like, the next thing you do in these situations is you backpack. So I was like, I'm gonna start backpacking Europe, do that cliche thing. None of this was planned. I would literally always like finish one thing and then think of the other thing to do and then do it. So I started solo backpacking. Should I list all the places I went? It's not that many, it was a few countries. It wasn't that many because there's a 90-day visa restriction and the majority of European countries outside of the UK for a Canadian. So since I had spent 35 days in Lyon already at this retreat center, I only had 55 days. After Lyon, I went to Bordeaux, France. I went to Saint Sebastian on the French side, and on the Spanish side, I went to Madrid, Cadiz, Seville. Yes, those were all in Spain. And then Portugal, Albufeira, Faro, Lisbon, Porto. And then I flew to Germany, Italy. I don't know why I said Germany. Then I did Milan for a night, Florence, Venice, Bologna, Verona, Rome. So I couldn't make it to southern Italy before my time ran out. Backpacked all of this. Majority stayed in hostels. Nothing crazy happened, no story from hostels. The only like funny thing was there were hostels that had 3 bunk beds. Like, you've seen bunk beds, but have you seen like 3 stacked beds? It was crazy. I did sometimes stay at an Airbnb, but it was really lonely, so I preferred the hostels. And it was also interesting, there was a lot of people in a hostel room and they're coming and going. And I thought that that sound would disturb me because I'm such a particular person, but it didn't because I had lived alone in this apartment in Vancouver throughout COVID and remote work, and I was just so sick and tired of being alone and solitary so long that yeah, I found comfort in these weird hostile environments that had a lot of people and noise. What can I say about those backpacking experiences? They weren't motivated by seeing things and doing things, which would be a good motivation for backpacking. They were still motivated by understanding my mind and understanding myself. And an easy way to shake up your mental constructs of the world or your beliefs and views is to like shake up your environment. So that's what I did. I would just like, backpacking is drastically changing your environments all of the time and hoping that it leads to some shift in mindset or paradigm shift of your worldview. So after Rome, I would have liked to continue backpacking. I would have loved to just backpack the entire summer in Europe, but because of the visa thing, I had to get out. So there was direct flights from Rome to London, and I had met a girl in Seville, Spain, who lived in London. She said I could stay with her. So basically I flew to London, stayed in a hostel a few days, met up with this girl. We still clicked, and then I stayed with her. And by this point, I had been backpacking for almost 2 months and not staying at any place longer than 4 days. So I was really tired. I was originally going to fly from the UK to Southeast Asia and explore those countries, again by myself. But then I got so tired and I just kind of settled in London. I really didn't expect to like London. I thought it would be just another big city like the big cities in Canada or the US. But ended up being really unique, really different, really diverse, motivating, lots of things to do, and I don't know, it was just really enjoyable. So I spent most of the summer there, not most of it, all of it there. I eventually got my own sublet, and I got into a routine of reading a lot, going to the gym, working out, and then trying to network, meet people, make friends, and trying some projects. So by this point, I think I finally got over my burnout and I was itching to figure out what work to devote myself to. But unfortunately, it's not that easy to figure out what work to devote yourself to, like what is your life calling. It's not easy to figure that out. So I tried some things, and then I was like, I should probably start thinking of employment, potentially in positions that will also build up like skills I lack. So like not just a normal IC job, but maybe a non-engineering job. So I needed a visa to do this, and I had to come back to Canada to do that. So I came back to Canada in September 2023 after a very long time of not seeing my family, almost a year. And I would say my friends, but I don't have that many friends in Vancouver. So yeah, I came back, and then once I came back and I saw my apartment, which I had been away for almost like 2 years. And I saw all of my things, and the last year and a half, I had literally been living off of like one suitcase. And then when I backpacked, it was literally just a backpack. So to have a permanent place, to have belongings, and to have like this peace and quiet, it was just too alluring. And having my family and my niece and nephew nearby, it didn't make sense anymore to return back to London, which would be a foreign environment again for me. And I also realized that, okay, I've shaken up my external environment so much, and I know I still have things to figure out. And I think one of my flaws is that I tend to overthink a lot. I was reading this book recently, Notes from the Underground, and by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I should learn how to say his name because I think I will be reading much more from him. But one of the main, well, not one of the narrator of this book is also a person who overthinks a lot. So while I was reading that, I was like, shit, I relate too hard to this, and therefore I should probably figure out a way to stop the path I'm in. Anyway, so I've been in Vancouver since September. Let me look at my notes. I've tried some different things to figure out my passions, but the main thing I'm doing right now is building iOS apps that solve my basic problems, because one of the motivating factors I had for even learning how to code was I thought I could bring into fruition the ideas I have in my head. And I believe for me to find fulfillment in coding, I need to adhere to that. So right now, I really love building tools that solve my life's most fundamental problems. And on one hand, these are really naive projects which people build in hackathons, but on the other hand, they're actually working and helping me solve things. So I need to balance those two perspectives. One, thinking too hard about how other people perceive things, and then what I actually want to do. That's a challenge I have of balancing. I'll give you an example of an app I built. I had trouble all of my life waking up at a consistent time for various reasons, some of them legitimate and some of them just excuses. So I built an alarm clock app a month ago based on these ideas that I learned through meditation. And basically, long story short, I fixed my sleep. I wake up around 6 a.m. without an alarm now, but it was exactly 6 a.m. for 28 days straight. And now I literally have a habit of it. So it was really freaking cool to build a tool to do that. Not to sound too romantic or cliche, but Steve Jobs said that computers were the bicycle of the mind. They have the potential to accelerate our normal mind functions. Like, just think back in the day when spreadsheets came out, how much it accelerated the thinking of accountants. I think similarly, we haven't really scratched the surface of how useful these devices can be for optimizing things for us. Normally we rely on our stupid frickle brain to do. What else am I doing? I'm reading and meditating a lot. I meditate for at least 30 minutes every day. If I don't meditate, then I think that my entire world is in a whirlwind and nothing makes sense. So I have to meditate because my mind is crazy. Essentially, it goes through 100 different routes and paths and thinks of 100 different things. So meditation is really fundamental to my life now. I also read a lot. I've always loved reading. I loved reading as a kid. I did less of it some while ago, but now I'm doing more of it again. It's one of my, you could say, guilty pleasures. I have to stop myself from reading so much. But at the same time, I think reading is the only thing that is helpful for understanding my life. Reading these amazing thinkers of the past who gone through similar universal human struggles, and then reading about it makes you feel less lonely and also helps you understand the intricacies of your mind. So I'm doing a lot of time, spending a lot of time doing that. I'm also starting an incubator program, a startup creator program in Toronto at the end of March. This is by Antler Co. I didn't expect to get in, and I guess my nonchalant attitude made them accept me. So I'm gonna go there and create a startup, and this will be different from the experience of New York because I will have quit my job and I won't be building in Web3, which was an industry I didn't freaking care about, but I went through with it. This one's more open-ended. You're gonna meet founders, you're gonna create your founding team, and then pick an idea, iterate on it, and build it, and it's gonna be awesome. So yeah, I'm doing that. And then one other thing that I keep mulling over my head is I really would like to start a podcast on the theme of books. I would like to speak to authors of books I like. I realized one of the things I like spending most of my time on is ideas. It sounds very vague, but I noticed when I'm conversing with people, the only interesting conversations that I find are the ones that discuss ideas. I think it would be so marvelous to have an opportunity to talk to people who have become so good at, putting their ideas into words and talking about that. Anyway, I think that would be cool. People tell me I should do it. They think I'm a good conversationalist or whatever. I mean, you don't know because this is just one-sided, but apparently I am. So I want to get that off the ground. I'm going to start uploading more, maybe once a week. Sometimes I lose motivation because I don't like editing and I don't like being in front of a camera. I hate that this makes me nervous. But I think I will do it because why not? I should do it. I have a few thousand subscribers and maybe I can use you guys to help me with my other projects and ideas. So yeah, what type of videos would you like me to do? Let me know. Thanks for listening to this. Oh my god, this went for 35 minutes almost. That is crazy. Don't have anything else to say. Okay, maybe the last thing. What are the challenges remaining for me? So I talked about what's upcoming for me and what I'm spending my time on, but what are the challenges remaining for me? So there's a few. One main challenge I am facing, grappling with, trying to figure out is myself. The old saying of know thyself, shout out Shakespeare. Yeah, I want to know who I am, what motivates me, how my mental intricacies work, what my motivations are, which I thought in the past, obviously you know yourself best of anyone, but there's actually a lot of things that we're not conscious of that drive us. So I would really like to know myself, and I would also like to peel away the things that I think I know about myself or my desires that aren't actually from within, but other people or societies. Influences, that good teenage stuff. Second, I would like to come to an understanding of what life is, how it ought to be lived, which are big, bold questions, which some people say we will never find an answer to, and therefore we shouldn't muse over such things. But if I weren't to muse over such things, what the heck else would I do with my life? And then third, I would like to find that particular work that I want to devote myself to. One of the philosophies I've come to an understanding of for myself about life is that work is really the best expression of a self, of you as a person. No one could tolerate a hedonistic life, even though they think that they work hard in order to have those pleasures, but really work is the central component of a life. And then the fourth thing is I want to help my family. I want to fulfill that social obligation that I have put on myself and that I would like to have put on myself. So those are the challenges remaining. Let's see how it goes. Thank you for listening to me. Have a good day.